Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti, and tonight we got a lot to talk about. We have details about All Elite Wrestling's second show, Fight for the Fallen. We have Torrie Wilson going into the WWE Hall of Fame, the passing of King Kong Bundy, and our predictions for WWE Fastlane this Sunday. And we also have a big announcement at the end of this episode. But before we get to all that, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell for notifications, as we're trying to hit 5,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling Double or Nothing. So Ralph, let's start it off with the details for Fight for the Fallen, which is happening on July 13th at Daly's Palace in Jacksonville, Florida. It's a very small venue. It is in the complex of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it's owned by the Jacksonville Jaguars owners, the Khan family, but it only seats 5,500 people. Surprisingly, very small for something like this, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a little small in comparison to obviously what they're going to be doing for Double or Nothing. But at the same time, again, this is only their second show, so this is why we talked about in one of our last shows. You know, it's fun to speculate, but we have to also remember that this is a newly formed company, so we have to kind of wait and see what the demand's going to be like. I don't think they're going to have any trouble selling this out, but I do feel like we have to wait and see how successful Double or Nothing is. See what the buzz is following that. We have to see if they're able to follow up after Double or Nothing and put on another good card and another good show. So, you know, is it disappointing? To some, it may be disappointing, but again, you know, once people start speculating where they're going to be, talking about stadiums like we did on the show, when you hear the size of where the show's actually going to be held, of course it's going to be disappointing, but remember, that's only going to be their second show, so only bigger things to come for All Elite Wrestling after that.
And the other thing, too, is that it is for a good cause. It's all the proceeds are going towards gun violence victims in Florida after the shootings that happened in Jacksonville and all around Florida. There's been a couple there. 5,500 maybe is a safe bet here for a show like this. And it's very interesting that it's at a amphitheater, because the way amphitheaters are constructed, it's not necessarily made for a wrestling show. Those are made more for concerts and plays and you know, operas. You know, I don't really see how this is gonna, I guess the ring is gonna be on the stage, but how are the wrestlers gonna, are they gonna walk through the aisle, through the crowd? Are they gonna come from the sides of the stage? It's interesting. I'd like to see how this ring is outlaid at the end.
Well, I guess it would be interesting to note, you know, that one would probably suggest that a cruise ship isn't necessarily fit to have a wrestling event held in it, and we know that obviously happened with Chris Jericho's Rock and whatever it was called. I know he's having a second one, so yeah, I mean, is it going to be unique? Yeah, but you know what? At the end of the day, as long as it's a good show, I don't think people are going to complain where it's held.
Let's move on now to some big news in WWE, and that is that Torrie Wilson was announced, as they reported it, as ESPNW first breaking it, but we all know in the internet wrestling community that it was WrestleVotes that originally broke this news, and it's that Torrie Wilson will be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this year, and it brings up a lot of buzz in social media, some positive, some negative. I've seen a lot of people saying it's deserving. I've also seen that it's not deserving. What did she do in her wrestling career besides stand there and look pretty? I mean, this was a time in the wrestling world, especially in women's wrestling, where the women were more TNA than they were in-ring performance, and she was really the main woman at that time. So I understand in that regard, she was the top woman at the time, so that's where the credit's due, but she never won a championship. She didn't have a memorable match that you could think of, and you can name probably 3 or 4 other women that should be in before her, Ralph.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but again, like you pointed out, you have to also have to take into consideration when she was in the WWE and what was going on with women at the time. So, you know, whether it was Raw or Smackdown. So, you know, I think once Sable left, I think they actually had a good storyline between Sable and Torrie Wilson at the time. But once Sable left, she really kind of assumed that role as the, I guess you would say, the face of women's wrestling, if you want to call it that. But like you kind of pointed out, so this was during a time when women, they were given a few minutes to have matches. Usually there was some type of weird stipulation where it was like a bra and panties match or something like that. Very rarely did you get a straight up wrestling match. You know, those matches were really held for Trish Stratus, Lita. Those people come to mind. Jacqueline. I'm sure there's other people that I'm not thinking of, but Torrie Wilson was really responsible for being, I guess, the female face of the company. In my memory, once Sable left.
I'm gonna say there's probably 3 people that I saw a lot of that should get the recognition instead of Torrie Wilson this year. Victoria, Molly Holly, and I even saw some people talking about Melina getting inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. I personally don't think the latter as far as those 3, but I definitely think there should be some consideration for Victoria and Molly Holly. I mean, they had some memorable feuds. Victoria had 2 WWE Women's Championship runs. Molly Holly, not only was she doing stuff with just the women, she was having intergender matches. She had a intergender tables match. I was actually kind of surprised it wasn't Molly Holly that got the nod this year, and it was Torrie Wilson.
I wouldn't say I'm surprised. I mean, at this point, they've put in so many big stars and big names in that, you know, there's only so many people that are left that they're going to be able to induct. You know, I figured that Torrie Wilson probably would have gone in. Sable is somebody that we talked about earlier who isn't in, but I think eventually she's going to go in as well. You got to remember, it wasn't always about women's championships and great matches. It was more so about the character that they portrayed, especially for the women during that time. So, you know, should she go in based on the merits of whatever her wrestling ability was? Probably not. She probably doesn't have the accolades or anything like that to support her going in. But was she a memorable character? Do people remember her? And I think the answer would be yes. So you can even compare it to like somebody like Goldust, right? Did Goldust ever really have a major championship run? No, but do you think that his character...
I don't know. That's not necessarily true. He did have the Intercontinental Championship for a good while in his first run. But I understand what you're saying. There are those that are in the WWE Hall of Fame that never even won a title. The first name that comes to mind to me personally is Jake the Snake Roberts.
Right.
Coco Beware is in the WWE Hall of Fame and never won a championship. So yes, I do understand the titles and the accolades should matter when picking someone in the WWE Hall of Fame. But at the same time, Jake the Snake Roberts made a much bigger impact in the professional wrestling world than Coco Beware. Who got in first? Coco Beware. So
I was making, you know, I'm not trying to discredit anything Goldust did. I know he certainly won championships, but championships aside, I think Goldust is going to be more known for the character he portrayed more so than any championship he held. So Torrie Wilson, not that she was any major character, but she at least is remembered to this day for her contributions to the women's division. You know, granted, it wasn't the best of the women's division of all time, but, you know, it is what it is. They have to induct somebody. And
yes, they definitely do. And I know there's a lot of people buzzing about this guy and that guy and how come this person's not. I mean, every year around this time, we hear about the people that are getting snubbed. This guy's got to get in. How come this guy's not getting in? And one of those names that does get thrown around a lot is, in fact, King Kong Bundy, who passed away late last night, Tuesday morning at the age of 61. For those that aren't quite familiar with King Kong Bundy, he was probably one of the big heels of the 80s. He main evented WrestleMania 2 in a steel cage match against Hulk Hogan. He had the 9-second match against SD Jones at WrestleMania 1. He had the splash onto Little Beaver at WrestleMania 3. And he also was one of the victims of the Undertaker streak at WrestleMania 11. So he did have his impact in WWE and also on the mainstream level, Ralph. Not only was, you know, he an impact in WWE, but he was one of the reasons why the Bundy family was called the Bundys on Married with Children. I did not know that until I saw the news of King Kong Bundy, and he's also appeared in an ESPN commercial. So this is one of those where after seeing this and learning more about him, I'm surprised he's not in the WWE Hall of Fame yet.
Yeah. And I'm sure he will be going in at some point, maybe not this year, but I'm sure in the years to come. Like you pointed out, thinking back to when I first started watching wrestling, this was before I was even born, but, watching VHS tapes in the basement. He was one of the first people that I remember watching. So, like you said, he main evented WrestleMania 2 alongside Hulk Hogan. He definitely had some major contributions to WWF, but not only WWF, the wrestling industry as a whole. So, unfortunately, we lost a legend, and I'm sure that at some point he will be going into the WWE Hall of Fame.
And of course, he's most famous for his infamous 5 count instead of the 3 count, which I heard Jim Ross actually gave him the idea to do that. Big E Langston, when he was first in NXT, started using the 5 count in honor of him. So his legacy has transcended into today's wrestling. And of course, this is where the big guys, the super heavyweights, he was really one of the first of the super heavyweights to break through in professional wrestling at a time where we also saw Andre the Giant and Big John Studd. He was part of that elite group of the super heavyweights, and he will sadly be missed. So let's move on, Ralph. We have a big pay-per-view this Sunday, Fastlane. At the time of this recording, we are recording in the middle of Smackdown, and at that time we have not gotten any additional matches, but there's only 6 matches on this card so far, Ralph. So let's quickly go through them. We don't need to do a deep analysis on each match because unfortunately, Fastlane, a lot of people consider this kind of, I wouldn't say a throwaway pay-per-view, but people kind of look past it because of WrestleMania. And honestly, I think we need to get rid of one of these 2 pay-per-views in between Royal Rumble and Fastlane and just have one in between. What do you think of that?
I agree. I think there's way too much time between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, especially in today's age when you have all the social media, and given the fact that people's attention span is becoming less and less. It's just too much time, too much can go wrong. People can get hurt, like we've seen happen in the past. It puts a lot of stress on the writers to make sure things are fresh and consistent on a week-to-week basis. Too much time in between. Do away with one of them. I don't know how you fix the whole between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania thing, but I think there's way too much time in between all of that.
All right, let's start off with the Smackdown Tag Team Championship. It is the Usos against The Miz and Shane McMahon. I see the Usos retaining, either Shane or The Miz turning on one or the other. I see Shane being the one that actually turns, setting up their match at WrestleMania, and the Usos. Actually, I heard that it might be possible that we see the Usos and the Hardys at WrestleMania for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. So I'm going to go with the Usos retention here.
I agree. I do think that we're going to see a heel turn. I think it's going to actually be the Miz that turns on Shane. But, yeah, I think the Usos take this easily.
Another tag team match. This one for the Women's Tag Team Championships. The Boss and Hug Connection in their first defense against Tamina and Nia Jax. Honestly, I could see Nia and Tamina actually winning this, but I'm going to go with the Boss and Hug Connection winning.
I agree. Boss and Hug Connection. I'm actually surprised Nia and Tamina are even in this match, but yeah, this is probably one I'm not going to pay too much close attention to.
Hey, Ralph, remember the last time Asuka was on SmackDown?
It was probably before Royal Rumble.
No, it was definitely after Royal Rumble. She was actually on last week's SmackDown, and where she lost to Mandy Rose, and now she's actually going to have a championship match. Our next match here is Asuka versus Mandy Rose for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Do you see Asuka retaining, or do they actually put the belt on Mandy Rose?
I think Mandy Rose will be champion at some point. I just don't think this is the right time. Let Asuka, well, I mean, you would think that they would have tried to make her title reign now seem a little more prominent and meaningful heading into WrestleMania. Unfortunately, we've been about a month since she's won, well, probably more than that since she's held the belt. and she's had limited appearances, and it doesn't really feel meaningful at all. So I want to see Asuka win. I want to see her retain and have a good WrestleMania moment. Will that happen? I'm not so sure at this point. So anything could happen, but I'm going to think Asuka retains.
Believe it or not, I actually think Mandy Rose is winning, because the fact that they haven't used Asuka in the last month and a half since she tapped Becky Lynch at Royal Rumble, I think maybe they set up Mandy Rose to win the SmackDown Women's Championship, and it leads to Naomi versus Mandy Rose at WrestleMania, because I know they had that feud going for a while, and it quite isn't done yet. So they put it on the back burner for a while so that Mandy could have the match with Asuka, and Mandy Rose wins. Now, the next one is another SmackDown match. It's for the WWE Championship, Ralph. Kevin Owens, who replaces Kofi Kingston, goes one-on-one with Daniel Bryan. Who you got with this?
Daniel Bryan to retain. I don't know if he's going to outright win the match, but I'm sure there'll be some type of fluky finish where Kofi Kingston gets involved, setting up yet another triple threat for WrestleMania.
I'm going to disagree, Ralph. I'm going with Kevin Owens winning.
Okay.
I'm going with Kevin Owens winning the WWE Championship.
Who does he face at Mania?
Kofi Kingston. It's going to be KO and Kingston, because if you watch last week's SmackDown, it's like Kevin Owens felt sorry for replacing Kofi Kingston, but totally understands, like, this is what, at the end of the day, Kevin Owens is there to win the WWE Championship. But he feels sorry for Kofi Kingston. So you know what? I win. You get your rightful title match that you should have gotten in the first place. Because if Daniel Bryan wins, it doesn't guarantee that Kingston will be the number one contender. So I think the story was actually planted last week, Kevin Owens versus Kofi Kingston. The other thing that may happen is if Kevin Owens wins, it will be Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston versus Kevin Owens in a triple threat match.
That's what I think is going to happen.
So, well, I mean, I would like it to be more of a one-on-one, because we're already seeing too many multi-man matches as it is. But you know how WrestleMania is. It's everybody's got to get on the card somehow, and they all can't be in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Speaking of multi-man matches, the next one here is The Shield for one last run against Baron Corbin, Bobby Lashley, and Drew McIntyre. Who you got?
For the love of God, just let the Shield win this and let this whole thing end. I'm so sick of this dynamic between McIntyre and Corbin and Lashley and the Shield. I feel like this has been ongoing for like a year now. The Shield wins.
The Shield wins? Yeah, I say the Shield wins, but I think there's more to this than meets the eye. I think a lot of people are kind of just putting it in the back burner. Yeah, let's have the Shield do one last run because Ambrose is leaving and Seth Rollins is going for Brock Lesnar at the Universal Championship. So this is really the last opportune time to have the Shield. But what if they are setting up a Roman Reigns heel turn?
When you talk about opportune time, that was one of the things I was going to suggest. If there's ever a time where Roman Reigns should turn heel, it should be right now. On the heels of his return, he's earned the respect of the Shield. Nobody would really, or he's earned the respect, convinced them to come back and join him one more time for their swan song or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it would set up for something interesting. He can really cut some good promos, especially on the crowd. But I think we've seen this and been teased this before, so I don't know if it'll actually happen, but I guess we'll see.
Well, it would actually be a nice way to end this whole Shield thing, this whole story with the Shield, because Seth turned on them first, then Dean turned on the Shield. So Roman just has to. Everything happens in three, so Roman has to turn on the Shield at some point before everybody goes their separate ways, whether Dean goes to the Independents or AEW or wherever he's going. If he even is leaving WWE, now there's reports saying that he is staying and they're promoting him for shows in May. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but I would definitely say I would put a heel turn on Roman Reigns. I know it might seem a little insensitive, especially because of the whole leukemia thing, but this might be the right time to do it. Our last match is for the spot at WrestleMania to face Ronda Rousey. We already know Charlotte Flair is in the match, but is Becky Lynch going to be in this match? If she wins, she's in. Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch. Makes you wonder what the heck the Royal Rumble was all about.
Well, first of all, I think Becky Lynch is going to win this. What the hell was the whole point of that segment last night just for Ronda to come back out and demand her championship and have it handed to her?
I don't know. The execution and the storytelling of that segment was a little off, but there were some good things that came of it. One, obviously, the Ronda Rousey heel turn. I did like the way Charlotte Flair kind of just let Ronda go at Becky. It was kind of like a heelish thing, but she also kind of was like trying to go after Ronda at first, but then she's like, nope, I'm out. You take care of her. You beat her up. You make her wounded for Sunday, and I'll take care of her on Sunday and make this a one-on-one match that I wanted to. So that I actually liked. I personally thought the Ronda promo was really one of her better ones, but she's got to do something to make these promos really, really good. And that's slow down.
I feel like Ronda, when she's in that mode where she's giving something that she's really passionate about, or giving a promo where she gets to play a little bit of the heel like we saw last night, it actually comes off really well. The problem is I feel like she's reciting lines and regurgitating them, and she's trying her best to just get them out as fast as possible so she doesn't mess up. And when you look at some of the best promos and the people who cut the best promos, it's all about cadence and taking your time and reading the crowd and waiting to see how they react to certain things. And she just doesn't have that yet because, you know, until she came to the WWE, she was used to cutting promos in a limited capacity in the UFC, but these were just kind of like
was she that way in UFC too, though? When she did have like interviews with Rogan, was she like that much of a motor mouth too?
I mean, a couple of times come to mind where at the weigh-ins where she would get flustered and she'd come off that way, yeah. But you also have to remember she wasn't really expected to portray a character, like, and that's the problem. Like, she has to understand there's certain things she can say and certain things she can't say because, yes, like we've said, this is scripted, but there's certain things that she's saying that are taking away from the believability of the hype to this match. So, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things that, you know, one of wrestlers always struggle with the promo side of things. You know, it's not something that just comes easily. Some people are naturals at it, and some people have to work at it. I think, unfortunately for her, she would be much better off with a mouthpiece, but it doesn't seem like that's something that's going to happen for her, unfortunately.
Yeah, so you do have Becky winning this, right?
I have Becky winning this, and I have this being a triple threat. For what reason, I don't know. I would have much rather have seen Charlotte Flair and Asuka and Ronda and Becky in their own matches.
I agree. Becky is going to win. Honestly, I would have still had this match. I would have reversed it. I would have had it where if Charlotte won, she would get put into the match because Becky was the Royal Rumble winner. She still has that spot, but I guess the way you can work around this was she was suspended, therefore lost her Royal Rumble spot. It's just, They didn't explain it too well. And the way you know, that's the stuff that WWE writing is kind of missing. You know, explain why it's Becky that's fighting for this spot and not Charlotte. Just saying, you know what, when you got suspended, you lost the Royal Rumble spot. There you go. All done. Now people don't complain. Well, what's the Royal Rumble for?
Yep.
But now we have this, you know, the Royal Rumble means nothing if Becky Lynch is, you know, has to win twice to get in. And this, like I said, this isn't the first time this has happened where the Royal Rumble winner had to win twice to get into the WrestleMania match. Let's not forget Stone Cold Steve Austin in 97 won the Royal Rumble, but then had to win a Fatal 4-Way the following pay-per-view, lost it, so then The Undertaker and Sid had the WrestleMania 13 main event instead of Stone Cold Steve Austin. So that has happened before. It doesn't happen that much, but it has happened before.
Yeah.
So, all right, Ralph, before we get going with this episode, we want to let you know some big news. on the channel, on the podcast. We went on our YouTube community page and we asked you, if we did a March Madness tournament, what kind of tournament would you like us to do? And the options were best WrestleMania matches, best wrestlers of the WrestleMania era, best wrestlers of all time, and best wrestlers of today. And you guys selected best wrestlers of today. So on Friday's episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble, Ralph and I will be picking 8 wrestlers each to create a bracket, what we're calling the World Wrestling Elite Tournament. The top 16 wrestlers in the world from WWE, All Elite Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, any wrestling in the world, we're going to put them in a bracket, and then you guys will vote all over social media, all over the YouTube community page on who is the best wrestler in the world. If you're new to this channel, though, you got to make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell for notifications, because at the end of all this, we're still trying to hit 5,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling Double or Nothing. And if you still want to vote on social media, we're there on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. So make sure you stay tuned Friday morning when our new episode comes up for the World Wrestling Elite Tournament. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti, and thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.